It's as if your brain quietly says, what they're feeling, I'm feeling too. That's why you cry during a movie, even though you know it's fictional. That's why your heart breaks when you see a stranger crying on the street. That's why a song you've heard 100 times can suddenly leave you in tears without warning. Your brain is literally simulating someone else's emotional experience, as if it were happening to you. And this is where most people misunderstand you. They think you're overreacting, but you're not. You're simply experiencing emotions at a volume they were never wired to hear. Imagine two people listening to the same piece of music. One hears the melody, the other hears every instrument, every tiny vibration, every hidden note. Neither person is wrong. One is simply receiving far more information. Emotional sensitivity works the same way. It's almost as if you were born with perfect pitch. But for emotions, while everyone else is listening through half-volume headphones, your brain is hearing the entire orchestra. Now, if you're somewhere between your mid-30s and your 50s, you may have noticed something. You cry more easily today than you did 20 years ago. And no, you're not imagining it, nor are you getting soft. There are biological reasons for this, and there are psychological ones. And together, they tell a fascinating story. Let's begin with biology. As we age, our hormone levels naturally begin to change. For women, hormonal shifts during perimenopause and menopause can significantly influence emotional regulation. For men, gradual hormonal changes over time can also affect emotional processing. The result? The brain becomes, quite literally, more emotionally permeable. But biology is only part of the picture. Life itself changes you. By this stage of life, you've accumulated experiences that your younger self simply couldn't understand. You've probably lost someone you loved. You've experienced heartbreak. You've been disappointed. You've watched dreams fall apart. You've discovered how difficult it is to carry the weight of a family, a career, bills, responsibilities, and relationships that sometimes feel heavier than they do joyful. So when a movie, a song, a memory, or an unexpected act of kindness touches one of those hidden places inside you, your nervous system no longer has the energy to pretend nothing happened. You're not becoming weaker. You're becoming more honest. The emotional walls you've spent years building are beginning to wear down, and perhaps that's the real reason. The problem isn't that you cry too much. The problem is that you spent decades training yourself not to cry, and eventually, that training begins to crack. Your body gets tired of carrying emotions it was never meant to suppress forever. Because no matter how strong you appear on the outside, your nervous system was never designed to store every feeling indefinitely. Sooner or later, it asks to be heard. And sometimes, the only language it has left is tears. There's a reason you cry in your car alone before walking into your house. And no, it's not because you're too sensitive, like people have told you your entire life. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may explain something you've probably felt ashamed of for years. Today, I'm going to tell you something that most people your age have never been told, something that may finally help you stop feeling guilty for crying during a movie, over a song, or even because someone asked, "Are you okay?" at exactly the wrong moment. For years, people told you that you were too sensitive, that you take everything too personally, that you need to toughen up. Quietly, you started believing there was something wrong with you. But here's the part no one ever told you. Science has discovered that people who cry easily don't have a flaw. They have a different nervous system. And that nervous system may actually be more emotionally intelligent than most people realize. Let's break this down step by step, because what you're about to learn may completely change the way you see yourself. Let's start with something uncomfortable. If you're between 35 and 50 years old, you probably grew up in a world where crying was considered weakness. Men don't cry. Stop crying over nothing. You're being dramatic. Those words didn't disappear when childhood ended. They became a silent alarm in your brain, one that goes off every time you feel like crying in public. And that alarm doesn't protect you, it shames you. While you were trying to hold back tears during a work meeting, at the funeral of someone you barely knew, or during your nephew's birthday. Your body was doing exactly what millions of years of evolution designed it to do. Because crying isn't a malfunction. It's your nervous system working exactly as it was meant to. If that's true, then the question isn't, what's wrong with me? The real question is, what does my body understand that I still don't? When you cry, your brain releases a unique combination of chemicals. Cortisol, the stress hormone, and oxytocin, the hormone that strengthens human connection. Crying is literally an emotional release mechanism. Your body recognizes that an emotion has become too overwhelming to process through thoughts alone. So it opens a physical escape valve. That's why after crying you often feel lighter, even when the problem hasn't changed at all. Here's the fascinating part. Not every brain activates that emotional release system equally. Some people have a more reactive limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions. They experience emotions faster, more deeply, and with fewer filters between what they perceive and what they feel. That isn't weakness. It's called neurological sensitivity, and it has a name you may have never heard before. Highly sensitive person, or HSP. Researchers estimate that roughly 15 to 20% of the population shares this personality trait. It isn't a disorder. It isn't a mental illness. It's simply a natural variation of the human brain. Just like being left-handed or having blue eyes. But it gets even more interesting. Scientists have found that highly sensitive people often show stronger activity in their mirror neuron system. Mirror neurons allow you to emotionally simulate what someone else is experiencing. That's why you cry during movies, even when you know the story isn't real. Why you feel emotional when you see a complete stranger crying. Why a single song can completely overwhelm you, even after you've heard it 100 times before. Your brain doesn't simply observe emotions, it experiences them. This is where people misunderstand you. They think you're overreacting, but you're not. You're simply experiencing emotions at a volume they don't have. It's almost like having perfect pitch. But for emotions, while everyone else hears life through half-volume speakers, you're listening in full surround sound. If you're between 35 and 50 years old, you've probably noticed something else. You cry more easily now than you did 20 years ago. And no, you're not imagining it. You're not becoming weak. There are biological reasons and life reasons, and both are deeply connected. Biologically, hormonal changes, especially during perimenopause and andropause, affect emotional regulation. Your brain literally becomes more emotionally responsive. But psychologically, something even deeper happens. By this stage of life, you've lived enough. You've lost people you loved. You've experienced betrayals. You've watched dreams disappear. You've learned how exhausting it can be to hold together a family, a career, or a relationship that isn't always easy. So when something touches those memories, a song, a scene, a stranger showing unexpected kindness, your body no longer has the energy to pretend it feels nothing. You're not becoming weaker. You're simply becoming more honest with your emotions. And that's where the real issue begins. The problem isn't that you cry. It's that you've spent decades training yourself not to. And eventually, that training starts to wear out. Here's something you probably didn't expect to hear in a video about crying. Research in social psychology suggests that people who cry more easily often display greater empathy, better emotional awareness, stronger interpersonal relationships, and even greater ability to detect deception. Why? Because their emotional detection system is more finely tuned. They notice subtle changes in someone's voice, tiny shifts in facial expressions, awkward silences, the half-second glance that gives away a lie. Their emotional radar is incredibly precise. And like every powerful radar, sometimes it becomes overloaded. That's when the tears appear. So when you cry during moments other people consider too small, it isn't because you're fragile. It's because your brain detected emotional information that everyone else completely missed. But this sensitivity comes with a cost. Highly sensitive people are more vulnerable to emotional exhaustion if they don't learn healthy boundaries. They absorb other people's moods,
They absorb conflict. They absorb bad news. Even the tone of a text message sent late at night. If you've never learned to distinguish between your emotions and the emotions you've unknowingly absorbed from others, you can spend years feeling emotionally drained without understanding why. And here's the most important idea I want you to remember. Crying easily isn't the problem. The problem is judging yourself for something you don't yet understand. So the next time you feel that lump in your throat over something that shouldn't affect you so much, remember this: you're not weak, you're not broken. Your nervous system simply processes the world in greater emotional detail than most people. What you've been taught to see as a weakness may actually be one of your greatest emotional strengths. The real question is no longer, why do I cry so much? The better question is, am I learning to use my sensitivity, or am I allowing it to control me? If this video described you, type one word in the comments: sensitive. I'd love to know how many of you have been carrying this silently, believing you were the only one. And if you'd like the next video to teach you how to build emotional boundaries without becoming cold or distant, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.